Cadre 3. This is the second video in the series for our May 18th class. And this one's entitled The Public Policy Doctrine. The last video was a little longer than I anticipated, and this one clearly won't be because there's just a couple of key ideas about the public policy doctrine that I think is important to understand. And it has to do with, and this may be something, if you have an interest in it, you'll just want to Google the public policy doctrine to see what you can dig up. But essentially, these are the three things or four things that you would find that I think sometimes we forget that underlie all of the laws that are kind of the sacred ground, the things we don't violate, and that's what the public policy doctrine is all about. It concerns those things that and I'm just going to read this description from an article that I found because I think it illustrates it both. Public policy doctrine concerns the body of principles that underpin the operation of legal systems in every state. This addresses the social, moral, economic values that tie a society together and values that vary in different cultures and change over time. Law regulates the behavior either to reinforce existing social expectations or to encourage constructive change, and the laws are most likely to be effective when they are consistent with the most generally accepted societal norms and reflect collective morality of the society. So I think what that's basically trying to say is the one dimension of public policy doctrine is to make sure we create and uphold those laws that hold us all together. As diverse as we are, and as difficult as that is becoming with our diversity. On the other hand, if change needs to be made, hopefully that we will accept that notion that we have to encourage constructive change, while at the same time we're still holding society together. And so public policy doctrine, I think, is really critical to understand. Whenever you look at a law and try to do an analysis of it or a policy of it, it applies to local policy, to state law, to federal law. What is it doing to hold society together? And then if it's trying to encourage change, how is it doing that, given that there are specific social and cultural norms and there are certain values that we have in keeping our collective society together? I think clearly you can see examples of laws that don't represent a collective sense of what holds our society together, and that also there are laws and policies that basically are trying to undermine things that we're doing, and not necessarily encourage change in a way that's constructive, but change in a way that really they don't care what the outcome is at all. Let's just get some change going on. And so I think it's important to understand that notion. The critical values in any legal system are things like impartiality, neutrality, certainty, equality, openness, flexibility, and growth. And as you think about those can be at odds with each other. They can all be aligned with each other, and there could be some things opposed to or aligned to certain other things, combinations of them. But collectively, those are the critical values that when you look at a legal system, legal set of policies that you're dealing with, and sometimes, like I said, they're in opposition to each other. Some of them can result in huge disputes that can even become violent because sometimes those laws clash with each other. Some fundamental principles of the policy doctrine. I just want to hit a few of these just to give you a flavor of them. This is not something that I think is going to make or break your success as a leader or your success in any particular role, but it's an understanding that I think is important. There are some fundamental principles. For example, when we talk about a legal system, ignorance is no excuse. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. In other words, you can't claim, well, I didn't know. And I don't care whether you're talking about getting a traffic ticket or a parking fine, or you're talking about some heinous act that would involve someone's life. You can't simply claim that you didn't know the law because it's out there. It's public. That's why it's called a public policy doctrine. Second one, and this comes probably from our religious and moral cultural values, is there's a certain sanctity to life. And you see that particular piece of the fundamental principles coming into play when we talk about abortion and women's rights, which can be intensely conflicting kinds of issues. I think another example of one that is worth mentioning is the issue of, I couldn't pronounce the Latin name if I tried, but it's that issue of default to children based upon the protection of their interest, which may even include their parents. In other words, the state or the federal government has the right to sever the rights of parents when they feel that the safety and best interests of children are at stake, and they can actually have the state become the legal guardian to a child, and that's pretty universal. A fourth one that you do see coming up from time to time, especially when mixed marriages are part of the issue, and I mean mixed marriages in the sense of man to man or woman to woman, as opposed to the traditional or quote biblical kind of marriage, is the favor of the notion that family law and contract law overlap each other, and that any marriage entered into with genuine commitment should be held valid unless there's some good reason not to. And it's going to be interesting to see how that particular public policy doctrine plays itself out when we talk about same-gender marriages that are now becoming common in Iowa and Colorado as our neighbors, and are probably going to become more common as we go along. But you can begin to see the juxtaposition of various pieces, but this is part of what is a fundamental principle of the public policy doctrine, that you can see the history of our culture, the history of our religious teachings creeping into and being the foundation for them. We don't tend to get into as many of those issues in foreign law because basically the nation does not recognize foreign law as having an applicability to a citizen. In fact, we have difficulty understanding that even if I'm visiting another country, that somehow just because I'm in France, France's law applies to me. We've had a number of incidents, and there's several international court cases going on right now where that has been the argument of the United States, is that this person is an American citizen, therefore they're not subject to French law. Various kinds of things like that. Well, the point of this was to say there are some cultural, social values, cultural values, kinds of underpinnings that tend to run through our policy, rules, regulations, laws that are kind of universal and have been there for virtually ever as this country has evolved. And it's important to understand those, because sometimes you watch the news and you go, why in the world are they doing that? Well, it has to do with some of those basic public policy doctrine principles that we've talked about in the public policy doctrine kind of thing. And so once you begin to understand that, you go, okay, I get it. I understand what that is. I don't necessarily have to agree with it, but I do understand, where it comes from. That's the end of this one, and there will be one more that I'll get put up in just a little bit.